We don't have 2 generations of time passing here. We got a newsflash. It goes right back to the scene itself. I mean, this is historical gold. And it's not the only early report we've got. We've got others right there from the first century in Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, the book of Acts, the other writings of Paul, all of which date back so early they were circulating during the lifetimes of Jesus' contemporaries.
Really? You're going to use Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John and all that other stuff. I mean, come on, man. We know that some of those Gospels weren't even written until the 70s. Okay? So don't try to fool people with all of this shit. We know that all of that stuff was written well after Jesus supposedly died. Not to mention the fact that these were just one group of texts out of hundreds. Many that we don't have now. We have references to others. We have references to some really fucked up shit that was floating around about the time. And so, I mean, you had all these mystery faiths going around that were preaching basically the same thing. They were teaching about a savior figure that would come, take away all their sins and shit, and you know, all you had to do was believe in this guy or believe in this faith, and you're going to live happily ever after. I mean, that's basically what the mystery faiths were. And Christianity itself started out as a mystery faith. So don't act like it was just all of these books were like already pre-bound and people had to cart around a whole bunch of different books in order to be Christian. And then, you know, Constantine was like, well, fuck, we ought to put all these in one goddamn book, shouldn't we? I'm tired of lugging this shit around with me everywhere. I mean, when I go to the battlefield to kill me some motherfuckers, I don't want to have to look through 17 volumes of books. Holy shit, let's just put them all in one thing. That's not what the Council of Nicaea was there to discuss, and that's not what the early what a snapshot of early first century Christians would have been like. Early first century Christians were Jewish. They were Jewish Christians, and then they started trying to convince the pagans to come in there, and that's when a lot more pagan type stuff got worked into the religion. You can see this by, you know, just the Davidic line of Jesus in general. God coming down impregnating Mary, that's fucking pagan as shit. You have contemporary authors of the time complaining about or talking about Christians that would complain about pagans inserting their own ideas into the religion, like God's coming down, immortal gods coming down, impregnating mortal women and having little half-immortal babies with them. Does that not ring a bell? If you're not thinking about Hercules from that Disney movie, you should be by now. Hercules, Hercules, Hercules! But as you can tell, we have several instances where not only have other religions affected Christianity, but Christianity itself was just among the pool of those religions at the time.
We have reports that he rose from the dead that come so immediately after the event, you can't just write them off as saying they're legend.
Yes, I can, because there's no reports of it happening. Like you say that there are reports of Jesus' death right after it happens, but yet you're not providing us any contemporary evidence to show that it actually is. All you're asking us to do is to perform circular logic to verify that Paul was indeed telling the truth and not bullshitting us because he's a schizophrenic motherfucker.
That's not all we've got. We've got a third E, stands for the word empty. We've got an empty tomb.
Okay. So let's recap real quick on his 3 E's now that he's revealed his last E. Number 1 is execution. Number 2 is what the fuck was his number 2? I can't remember. I know it was the creed and shit. I don't know what's number 2, Lee. It doesn't seem to really fit all that well. The third one though seems to be an empty tomb. It's really funny because in all of the Gospels there are different stories about how the tomb was found to be empty. I mean, you've got from the very simple in Mark where he just kind of he kind of ends really abruptly with some women finding the tomb empty, and then you've got Luke, who is a little bit more expressive about it, I guess. He goes into a bit more detail about finding it. And then you've got Matthew, who just fucking is out there as shit with an angel coming down and bitch slapping the stone away and being like, Jesus isn't here, bitches. You got to go and find him somewhere else. I don't know where the motherfucker is, kind of thing. And then, of course, you have John, who finds it in kind of a normal way. I think there's a kid sitting in there, or there's a guy sitting in the tomb saying it was empty or something. I don't know. But the point of fact is that you've got 4 different accounts of how the empty tomb was found. And not to mention that there's no evidence, like, outside of the Bible that even suggests that this happened. Like, okay, so let's just suppose that the tomb is empty, right? And the Romans found out. Everybody's spreading these rumors about Jesus coming back and whatnot. What would the Roman government that was controlling the area do? Seems to me like it's more probable that they would round up all of Jesus's pro-selves, murder the fuck out of them, and then also find Jesus himself and murder him a second time. And I think that that is more likely. But what do we see? We don't see that. We see the Roman government just being like, oh, fuck, he rose from the dead. Holy shit, I don't know where the fuck he is. This is so this does not mesh with history in such a fashion that it really does make me laugh my ass off.
It tells us that Jesus' body was laid in a tomb belonging to Joseph of Arimathea. Remember the Jewish council? It was sealed. Matthew tells us it was guarded, and yet it's discovered empty on that first Easter morning. Now, we could talk the rest of the day about all the strands of historical data that establish that the tomb was empty, but I'm just going to give you one fact, because to me this says it all.
All right, Lee, let's see. What's your one fact about the empty tomb that's just going to nail the coffin shut on whether or not Jesus rose from the dead?
That even the opponents of Jesus admitted that the tomb of Jesus was empty. How do we know? Because history tells us that when the disciples began proclaiming that Jesus had risen from the dead, what the opponents never said was, baloney, go open the tomb, you'll find the body. That's all they had to say. The onus would have been on the disciples to prove it. Instead, what do we know from inside the New Testament and outside the New Testament about what the opponents of Jesus said? You know what they said? Disciples, Jesus is risen. Opponents, the disciples stole the body. Now think about that. What is that? That's a cover story. They're implicitly conceding the tomb is empty, but they're saying we can explain how it got empty. The disciples stole the body.
I would love to know what first century documents you're talking about here. I have extensively looked over, what first century documents mention Jesus or mention anything remotely around Jesus. And there's no first century documents that I can think of that would say, oh, hey, they stole the body. Which, I mean, that's what I would have assumed too. I would have checked out the tomb to see if and then guess what? I would have rounded up his bro-cephs and been like, y'all fucking dead now. And then I would have sliced their throat because I'm a Roman guard and I'm hard as fuck.
It's like if you're a teacher and a student comes to you and says, a dog ate my homework. That student's admitting, look, I don't have my homework, but I can explain what happened to it. The dog ate it. It's the same thing. Everybody, either explicitly or implicitly, is conceding that the tomb of Jesus was empty. I don't think that's the issue of history. I think the issue of history has always been, how did it get empty?
Well, there, Lee. I mean, if you're going to cite, like Josephus and some of the other guys that were writing around the time, Josephus is a bad example, but a lot of the other guys that were writing around the time that are usually thrown out there, regarding Jesus, they're just citing like that whole creed thing, that creed that was supposedly developed moments after his death. They were reciting common beliefs of the time, common Christian beliefs, And so I just don't see that as any kind of evidence to say that, oh yes, he was executed. Just because these people have recited what they have been told isn't proof that whatever they've been told is factual.
And you go down the usual list, the disciples weren't about to steal the body. They didn't have the motive, they didn't have the means, they didn't have the opportunity. The Romans weren't about to steal the body, they wanted Jesus dead. The religious leaders of the day weren't about to steal the body. They wanted Jesus to stay dead. I mean, nobody had a motive. I mean, I think the best explanation for the tomb being empty is that Jesus did return from the dead, especially when we combine it with the fourth word that begins with the letter E, which is the word eyewitnesses.
So the fourth E, like John Cena.
John Cena!
The fourth E is eyewitnesses. What eyewitnesses? What eyewitnesses were there outside the Bible? Please, let's keep it outside the Bible. You've been doing enough circular logic this entire time. Fucking outside the Bible is what we need, okay?